Hello! Welcome to I Think You Think. Today is September 10th, 2013. And this is I Think You Think. Yes, there we are. Hello. And I'm Justin. On the other side of my computer screen is James.
Hello, folks.
And he is obviously in the middle of using something on his computer. And Sequoia.
Hi.
I am. Hi.
And we carry no credentials worth noting. I Think You Think is a podcast that focuses on what we, your hosts, think, but also what you think. James, Sequoia, and I believe that the forum of ideas should be open to everyone. Everyone should have the opportunity to challenge and be challenged by ideas. This doesn't flow quite as well. I'm going to have to rewrite it. We are not here to pass judgment, but we are merely here to discuss ideas and topics. This podcast, first and foremost, is a conversation between us and hopefully you. So feel free to email us. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and at the Chicago Now blogs. The links for all of these are in the underbar of the video. They are also found on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ithink.youthink. I Think You Think is produced by StolenArts Productions and is normally recorded live at Fisher International Studios, but is not being recorded live at Fisher International Studios right now because I am on vacation and Fisher International Studios is where I live. So there you go. I am actually still on vacation. This is technically the last day of my vacation, as I don't normally count the day of travel as part of the vacation because there's so much involved in it. And we are traveling back from Ohio back to Illinois tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, there you go. So, James, the blue thing is not working.
I know. It's kind of upsetting. If there's anyone, of our millions of watchers that knows how to fix my blue thing, please email us. We'll try to find it in all the massive emails that we get.
Yeah, and it's I Think You Think 2012 at gmail.com.
Were there any emails about consensus on my hair, whether or not I liked it?
Let's say they liked it. Let's just say they liked it.
No, whether or not I liked it. That was the question, is if I liked it or if it was annoying me.
Let's just say they think that you liked it. What do you think? Did you think
liked it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I was just
there you go. Okay. All right, well, there you go. We're going to dive right in, mostly because I'm still on vacation. Last day, I've got some things to do, mostly play Diablo 3. No, I did not go out and buy it, James.
You should. Just take it with you. Accidentally pack it.
I don't know how it got in my suitcase. It is a great game. Yeah, Diablo 3 is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to do a review at the end of this month?
Yeah, I could almost do one right now, but we have other topics.
We do, and so we will be doing. Hopefully, James will have a review for Diablo 3 at the end of the month. I've been asking my brother if he'd like to come on and do a review for Last of Us, which is a game he really liked for the PlayStation 3. Which, while I've been here in Ohio, I played through and beat.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I clocked 16 or 17 hours on the game. And played through and beat it. So if he is not interested in that, I will do it because it is a good game and I think it's worth at least talking about. So there you go. But the topic this week is time travel, and we didn't want to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into any specific thing with time travel. And in that vein, everyone should know that I'm actually broadcasting from the future. It is Christmas here during my vacation. It was not only I didn't only go in space, I actually went in time. So because I was going to be working during Christmas, I figured I'd travel to Ohio, visit my family, travel into the future for Christmas, and no chance that I'll run into myself, so we're good there. I don't violate any of the time travel laws, and you can tell that my entire story is true and not based on any kind of fiction or anything, because there is a Christmas decoration behind me. So that is all the evidence you should need. There you go.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that you kept the weight off.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been tough, but it gets easier and easier every day, I guess. So let's dive into this time travel thing. I don't know where you guys were kind of thinking about going with it, but uh, I found a couple of websites because I was like, I don't even know where I'm going to start, so I just typed time travel into Google, and I found a website in which they talk about, and I didn't get really enough time because I'm lazy and I'm on vacation to really dig in to find out if this was like satire or like if they're legitimately serious about these arguments. But there's a lot of like YouTube videos out there and entire websites that are dedicated to the same. It seems to be very similar photographs and video stills and things like that of proof that time travel actually takes place. That these, like, there's an iPhone in a movie or something, and there's this one particular gentleman who is in pictures ranging from, you know, all sorts of time periods, and so I thought it was interesting that there are people that have tried to figure this out, and then I actually have my own proof that I will never be able to use a time machine in my life. But we'll get back to that. What about you? We're going to go with Sequoia because James doesn't have the blue thing.
Damn it.
Like, well, I mean,
I'm calling my lawyer.
I think it's in your contract, James.
Yeah, if I don't have the blue thing, I always go first. But no, it's fine. Go Sequoia. Wait till I get that Christmas tree decoration off the wall from behind you, Justin, and I see you.
I don't know. I mean, I think time travel, as far as like people really believing that it's happening now, is sort of like believing in the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or, you know, any other number of sort of like really out there ideas. Like, I think it's a cool idea, but it's probably not real. The way I sort of picture time and how it works in my mind, I can't really think of time travel being possible. But then again, I'm no scientist, so who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I have more thoughts, but more pertaining to like the so-called rules of time travel, like within a sci-fi kind of world. So we could touch on that in a little bit. So I'll pass it over to James now.
You know, I don't know, the possibility, the not possibility. I'm sure there's scientists out there that can prove the existence of time, but I think time, like space, is like this weird thing that's kind of hard to really. Like, it's time, especially, is really based on our perception more than anything else. Like, it's not something that's got solid, definitive proof beyond our experience of it. So whether time travel is possible or not, I don't know. You know, you definitely have to be kind of sneaky about it if you were traveling back in time. You can't just be like, I'm from the future, because depending on when you went, they would probably burn you, or they would you know, take you and study you, or, you know, depending on where in history you were, it'd probably be A or B. There's not too many other options you'd have. But I was thinking about this. We decided.
I prefer worship you.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to probably lay it out differently then. You know, now, like, I'm from the future. But, you know, that's a whole nother. You know, I think in sometime in 2015, we've agreed that we're going to discuss how to start a cult, because WikiHow's got nothing on it. So I figured we could cross that. But we'll cross that later, how to start a cult, and we can discuss it going back in time and starting a cult. But knowing we were going to talk about this earlier today, because we decided this in our Facebook chat like we normally do, you know, 48 hours or less before the podcast actually goes, I posed a question to a couple of my workers. If you had to go back in time and you could never come back to modern time, you have to go, you can never come back, what year do you go to? So I will pose the question to Sequoia first. You have to go back in time, you never get to return to modern time, where do you go? We'll say a minimum of 10 years.
I don't know. That's a really good one. Like right away, my first thought is like the beginning of man. just...
That's vague. That's really vague. When is that, you know?
I'm talking like first hominid, which is
Okay,
sort
so
of...
like
Yeah, but you never get to come
that's about
back.
2 million years ago? Or is that
No,
Australopithecus that was 2 million?
No, we're talking about 6 million years ago.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking like first hominid. I'm not talking like...
Oh,
But
Yeah.
Sequoia, you never get to come back.
I know, that's why I'm saying that was my first thought, but that's
Okay.
probably mostly because that's what's on my mind right now, because, you know,
Yeah.
I'm studying evolution right now.
Yeah.
I don't know, part of me kind of wants to be like, Woodstock would be really cool.
Such a hippie.
But then I'm also kind of like, I don't know that I'd really want to.
You have to, though. That's part of the question.
I have to.
You have to go back in time. You never get to come back.
I was gonna say I'm gonna throw her a lifeline here and like chime in.
Okay.
So my sort of easy, simple, like this is easy. I would travel back to February 26th or whatever it was when we were leaving for our trip to Wales.
No, you can't do that. It's got to be a minimum of 10 years.
Oh, did you say that? Okay,
Yeah,
I missed
yeah.
that. I missed that portion because I was going to say, well, what would stop me from saying like 3 minutes ago?
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so if it's a minimum of 10 years, I would probably, assuming that I have time to like research it. I mean, if you go back 10 years, things aren't going to be that different. I mean, we're talking
Right.
2003. I mean,
Right.
it's not all you really lose is 10 years of your life, which, you know, and you can utilize that time however. But knowing that I'm going to be alone, like I'm not taking anybody with me, I'm going by myself. I really wouldn't want to be within the lifespan of anybody who I know right now, because that would be awful to know that those people exist, but you can't go interact with them in any regard because of that. You know, like if I went back to 2003, that's only a few years, a couple of years before me and my wife got married.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I could never see her again. You know, I couldn't interact or anything, assuming depending on how you see, you know, time.
Right. Well, you would still be there.
Right.
Like
I
the
would still
younger-
exist. Right.
Right.
Right. So I couldn't interact with my family or anything. So if I'm going to go, I'm going to go where that's not going to be the case. But I don't want to go too far back because I don't want to die of like, you know, smallpox or something. But at the same time, I mean, I think it might be really cool to see what the library in Alexandria was like, or exist during like the Renaissance, and what the world was like then. But really, I'd hate to like die of cholera, you know, or something like that,
Yeah.
or the Black Plague, you know. So I mean, it's tough. I think that if I was going to do anything, it would probably be like ancient Greece or something where they were very civilized and ahead of their time, and the technology was amazing back then. But they didn't have the internet. So
Yeah, that's true. Podcast over.
done.
See, a lot of that stuff sounds interesting to me, like going that far back. But if I was to stay forever, I couldn't see going back any earlier than like the 70s for music. You know what I mean? Like music alone, like you go back farther than that, there's really nothing. You know, there's very sparse amounts of things before the 70s that are appealing to me. And really, it kind of comes to the 80s. You know what I mean? For music, for me to really get good. So I think for me, like 84, 85 would probably be, and I know it's not exciting to go back to the early mid-80s by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, if I was to go and I could never come back, you know, there'd be advantages to going back to that time period, you know. The beginning of the NFL season for the year the Bears win, just throw a little money down. Now I'm set. You know, I got like a bunch of money. And then the early 90s come, and it's like Bulls, 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 Houston Rockets, Bulls, Bulls, Bulls. And by the end of the 90s, I'm rich. I'm old, but I'm rich, like creeping up on 60, but I got money to burn.
It's true, but the only problem is it really comes down to how you see time. I mean, and I think Sequoia started touching on this before we went off on this. So you were talking about that, right, Sequoia? Something that had to do with how we see time. Okay, so let's jump over to what Sequoia was talking about in regards to how she would see time, because you would create a situation if you go back and you bet on these things, you win this money, that originally you didn't exist to do that, and so that will affect things, regardless of how small it might be. It would affect things, and so there you go.
But didn't I?
Well, we know, like right now, that you didn't do that.
No, we don't. How would we know that?
I would imagine that it would
be in the news. Like,
sure.
I mean, it depends. We don't know that that's not the way it happened, anyways.
Well, I mean, specifically, yes, but that's taking the view that time is a single strand, and that if you go back and change something, either that's what it's always been, or you've diverted the timeline, a la like Back to the Future 2 type thing, where now it's a different future and you have to go back and change whatever.
Right.
But that's not how I see the timeline, and so I'm interested in how Sequoia sees the timeline, what she was talking about.
Well, I guess the thing is that I don't, like, in all reality, completely realistic point of view, I don't necessarily think that the way time is set up means that it's something that it can be traveled inside of. Like, I think once something happens, it's over, it's gone. There's no way ever that you could go back, because it's gone, it's over. It's not like, because to think that you could travel in time would mean that you think that that point in time is still accessible from where we are now, that in some dimension or some way it is still happening for you to be able to go back, which is all very, vague, hard to wrap your brain around concepts. But I will say that my favorite ever time travel concept, I won't mention what book it's from, just because if anybody has not yet read it, I don't want to ruin part of it for them. But there was a book I read that was about time travel. And it was talking about how in, most time travel books or stories, there's the grandfather clause, which is where if you go back in time, you have to be careful because you might end up setting up a chain of events that kills your grandpa, and then you're never born and you're erased from history. Right?
Creating a paradox, because then you couldn't go back to kill your grandfather in the first place.
And then you pop out of time and you die. There was a book that I read that was about time travel where the author posed the question, if there was no grandfather clause and you could go back in time and kill one of your ancestors, therefore unanchoring yourself from a point in time, you would still exist as an entity, but you would be able to travel freely throughout time because you had no point in history in which you actually existed anymore. So you could travel freely as an entity as you wished because you had no place in time. And I thought that was the coolest concept ever. That just blew my mind. I was like, dude, what if? And I think that is a very kind of cool way of looking at it.
So Sequoia wants to go back and kill her own grandfather so that she can exist outside of time.
No. I love my grandpa very, very much. He is an amazing man.
She'd go back 2 more generations to someone she doesn't know. I have no emotional ties to you.
Well, my thought is, and this is, I don't know. It's what I've kind of developed based on stuff that I've read about extending things out by right angles. So you start with the first dimension is obviously a single line, and then 2 dimensions is you take a right angle of that. Now you've got 2 dimensions, and then a third dimension is if you take a right angle of that, then you've got a cube. And then there's what they call I think it's called a tesseract, which is the 3-dimensional cube taken to a right angle of that, which goes into the 4th dimension, which is what they refer to as time. And then if you continued expanding that out, that you would it's crazy math stuff that I'm probably getting totally wrong because I don't have super advanced mathematics degrees on these things. But basically, you go up to 10 or 11 dimensions, depending on how you're talking about it. And the idea behind it is that there isn't a single timeline. There are every single point in which any kind of thing could change or anything like that. The timeline would branch. And so if I travel back in time and kill my own grandfather, I still exist because I'm from a timeline in which my grandfather wasn't killed. However, I would now be traveling along a timeline with the timeline in which I killed my grandfather, and I would never exist in that timeline, but I exist in this other timeline that I had traveled back from. It's not unlike Sliders, the late 80s, early 90s movie TV series.
It was on Fox, yeah.
Yeah, it was called Sliders. It ran for 8 or 9 seasons. It got really dumb after the 3rd or 4th season.
Yeah.
And basically they were sliding through dimensions, vastly different dimensions. Now, there are reasons why I don't think that that's true, because if there's an unlimited possibility of dimensions, then that exists, that there is a dimension in which they can slide through to other dimensions. And if there's an unlimited amount of those, then there's an unlimited amount of dimensions in which they've discovered that, and there's an unlimited amount of dimensions in which they've discovered that and decided to travel to our dimension. And therefore, we should have unlimited amounts of people traveling into our dimension constantly. So there you go. That's why I don't think that that's real. I don't think that that's the case. But it's if that's why I don't have trouble with time travel movies in which things get really wonky, is because I just say, okay, well, there's just different timelines and things like that. So
but then there'd be an unlimited amount of timelines.
Not necessarily. I mean, you could kind of limit it down and not say unlimited amount. You could say, okay, well, every time I have to make a decision about if I go left or right or straight or whatever, there's still only a limited amount of choices that I can make as that decision, and so there's still only a limited amount of timelines that can come out of that scenario.
But there's 7 billion people on the planet making decisions every day.
Yeah, but you could still say that it's still technically limited, even if it seems very limitless.
Okay, but you're not just talking about people either. You're also talking about every creature on the planet.
Every creature in the entire universe. I mean, this is even suns, even whether or not like one hydrogen atom decides to collide with this hydrogen atom instead of this hydrogen atom in the sun, or any star throughout the universe. I mean, it's really silly. There you go. I mean, that's I fully admit it's silly.
Well, time. I mean, it's super science fiction when you talk about time travel.
Yeah.
Like it's not. That isn't. I mean, who knows? Like a couple hundred years from now, we could be. It could be a normal aspect of our life to some degree, and there's like some significant limits to it. Like there's like you can't travel more than a year for some reason. Because of the way the science works.
Well, I know that. That in at least one of I think either Stephen Hawking was involved in it, or he maybe was a guest star or something. They talked about time travel and how it could take place theoretically, and there's a couple of different options. One is if you create a wormhole and you set it in orbit around our planet, a small enough wormhole that it's not going to like suck things in or anything. And then you put a linked wormhole to it and put it on a spaceship, and you travel it at the speed of light, out as far as you can. the relativity theory allows for time to actually slow down on the object that's traveling the speed of light, and so while only a year would have passed on that spaceship, 100,000 years may have passed at Earth. And it's provided that these two wormholes still exist and that you have the technology to send, energy or matter or whatever safely through it. You could, only a year has gone by in your realm and you travel through and you're 100,000 years in the future because of relativity. I mean, again, all of this is, you'd have to have basically unlimited power in order to open a wormhole big enough to send anything through or collapse whatever it is down to a small enough stream to. It's all science fiction stuff.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of things we live with today that were science fiction. 20, 30, 40, 100 years ago. I mean, just look around where you are. I mean, just the fabrication of some of the things that are in your house, not even like technology, just the fabrication of stuff 100 years ago is complete science fiction.
What about what we're doing right now? This was like...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was stuff of like, dreams.
Yeah, I mean...
For some people.
100 years ago, they had built a boat, well, by this point it had sunk, that they believed unsinkable to cross the Atlantic, and they were doing it in just a few days, I think, or a week or so. And that was the pinnacle of technology. And here we are, separated by 600 or 700 miles, talking relatively in real time, recording it, and it'll be out there for. Let's be kind and say, for the massive amount of people who watch our podcast and or listen.
A baker's dozen or more.
Yeah.
I feel like when I think about like if time travel ever became possible, I feel like there would be so many things, like, let's say it became something that was, like, part of the norm. I feel like there would be so many ways that it would be end up using in, like, such bad ways. Like, I feel like there would be, like, end up being, like, shows, like, cheaters used for time travel somehow. Or, like, people would start, like, it'd be, like, some kind of weird Eternal Sunshine thing where people are, like, going back in their, in their time streams to erase people. And I feel like it would end up being, like, so messy if, like, population at large got a hold of it.
Well, I think if something like that was ever, if the breakthrough was ever made, I don't think it would ever go public. I mean, if you grabbed a hold of time travel, would you share that with the world?
Me personally, no. God, no.
Me either. And I mean, like, I think for me, I would hope that it wouldn't make me a bad person, but I wouldn't share with the world because I basically don't trust the world enough to have something of that magnitude. You know what I mean? It's, but other people who might come across it wouldn't share it because for the worst of reasons. You know what I mean? Like, to manipulate that for their own good. And actually, when I was talking earlier about going back in time, I had all these sports betting things in mind to, like, make money and, like, do well, being back in time. And that wasn't even considered, like, what I could do if I just owned the ability to bop back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, you go back in time, you buy some, like, stock in, whatever, Apple in the
Microsoft,
beginning.
yeah, any
and put it in a safe deposit box, hide the key somewhere, come back to normal time, go get the key, go to the safe deposit box, pull it out, and bam, you're rich.
Yeah, or you go back in time and open an account with $1 or $2, a day's worth of wages, 100 years ago, to a bank that will exist now, and then you go back and here we are. How much interest have I gained over the last 100 years? So, yeah, we keep talking about going back in time, and it's almost like a narcissistic view that we're at the forefront, like we're at this cresting wave of time, and there's nothing that exists before. But if time travel was possible and we could go back in time, then it would also mean that points ahead of us could possibly exist. So I'd like to turn James's question around and say, if you could go forward, how far forward would you want to go?
After my time lifespan. I don't.
Well,
I don't
we
want
don't
to
know how
know
long
what's
that's gonna
gonna
be.
happen. Yeah, I know. I like as much as was kind of like I don't know if I'd want to go back in time. I really don't think I'd want to go forward in time.
But are we talking, you never come back, the same kind of scenario? You have to go at least
Yes.
10 years, you never get to come back?
Yes.
Well, I mean, in that case,
I think I'd go to 2050. I think that's enough time
2050.
for things to really, really progress, but hopefully not so far that, like, I'm completely disconnected from it. But, I mean, that is 37 years. That's a long time.
Well, keep in mind that 2050 is right around the time of the technology singularity.
What?
You know what the technology singularity is?
No, another end of the world thing?
It's not really an end of the world. It's more of a technology is advancing so fast that they've mapped out this point at which technology is going to reach a point in which it basically hits a singularity, because it's exponential in how fast it's growing.
Right.
You know, the amount that we've grown in the last 10 years is exponential, over the last like 20 years or so. I mean, it keeps speeding up, and there is going to become a point. There's two aspects of the singularity. One is that technology will start advancing so fast in which the technology itself is actually creating new technology, not even human beings at that point. Technology is advancing so fast that human beings are too slow to keep up with it.
Right.
And so an aspect of that singularity is that there will be a merging between the biological human being and what becomes the technological human being. So the idea is we'll be able to like download our memories and our brains and everything into cyborg bodies or into computers or something like that. So in order to keep up with the average Joe who's who's had their brain upgraded, to even access things like not Facebook, but the equivalent, in order to keep up with information that's coming at you so fast, you'll have to either upgrade or I guess not. But
Right.
That's the idea behind that technology singularity.
I'm going to change my answer. If 10 years is the minimum, 10 years is what I do. Not because of that, but just because I feel like 37 years would be so much that would change that I would just be completely unable to interact. I would be a stranger in a strange land.
Yeah, I mean, if we
even
were
10 years would be difficult.
Yeah, if we were coming from 2003 into 2013, I think we would be really impressed and super excited about a lot of the stuff that exists, but I don't think we could not exist. There would be a slight learning curve.
Right. 10 years is enough of a time for it to be significant, but not so much time. Because 37 years, if you think 37 years ago, that's 1976.
Yeah.
The world we're talking a very, very different place. Like, socially, politically, technologically, like, in almost every conceivable way, it is drastically different. So 37 years in the future, if you, like, continue that on, especially with what you're talking about and the, exponential growth of technology, I think 10, 15 years max, it'd be really interesting to go to that point, but I wouldn't know any of the players in the NBA anymore. They'd all be gone. Justin, you've gone black screen on me. Oh, no, you haven't. Man, Justin, I was just thinking, if I went in the future, where would I buy jewelry?
Well, if you were going into the future, one of the greatest places to probably buy jewelry
will still be
StravaMax.com. So you guys should go check out StravaMax.com, STRAVAMAX, obviously .com. If you don't know .com on the end of things,
then how did you find our podcast?
Exactly. Or how do you log on to Facebook? Oh, I just start typing face, and then I hit enter, and my computer takes care of the rest. Anyway, StravaMax.com is it's a website. They sell jewelry, all different kinds, all earrings, bracelets, necklaces. They've even started doing leatherworking stuff. And the young lady who makes the jewelry for StravaMax also made our graphics that you see in the lower left, yes, of our screens.
Except for mine, because my blue thing doesn't work.
Yes, and also this graphic, as soon as it shows up. Anytime now. Thank you. There we go. So this graphic as well. So we always want to thank those who help us out. So thanks.
We appreciate you, StravaMax, and I need to buy something there. Christmas is coming, and I'm going to use StravaMax.
I would say I need to, but my wife takes care of that.
Has she shopped at StravaMax yet?
She has. Not for me, but for her.
Nice.
So, there you go. There's still a lot to talk about with time travel. We can keep going with that, or we do have some articles if you guys want to move on.
We do, and I actually have one that's kind of along the lines, because we're talking about, going into the future, and, anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows I'm really, really bad at actually gathering articles. So they now make me do it during the pre-show. Which is good. It's good. A little structure, a little parenting for mom and dad over there on the other side of the podcast. So I found this article. I was just looking because I felt like time travel was so science fiction-y. 10 science fiction projects that are becoming reality. Now, number 10 is a Buzz Lightyear spacesuit, and I'm too old to care. So we're going to move right into 9. Commercial space travel. Now, we know this. I know Virgin Airlines has been doing stuff like that. Virgin Galactic spaceships. And that's kind of neat, it's just kind of go up into space and come back. It's not like, let's go see Jupiter. But still, it's kind of amazing. A Mars colony, where, let's see.
I think there's an actual company that's trying to put together that.
Yep,
yeah.
Elon Musk.
Yep. That's it.
And they're trying to a self-sustaining settlement of more than 80,000 people. It's more than the entire population of Bermuda, but that's not really too exciting when you talk about Bermuda. A NASA moon base, that is kind of neat. I don't know what we do with it. Space fighters, robotic vessel by the name of X-37B orbital test vehicle has recently returned from a mysterious 15-month testing session in low Earth orbit. The details of its mission remain highly classified. Blah, blah, blah. So moving on to number 5, space lasers. U.S. Strategic Command is actively researching in the field of space laser weaponry. Since the emptiness of space, lasers would have a very long range and they'd be extremely fast. Lasers have a speed of light, for those who didn't know. In fact, scientists have made up their minds about the most suitable weapons for space: chemical lasers and particle beams. Watch out, Martians. Space robots, kind of neat. They're called Robonaut, the Robonaut program. It's a NASA-DARPA joint project that has produced 4 different space robots so far. Number 3, suspended animation, and I can even say it.
Animation.
That too. One of the biggest problems with long-distance space travel is the enormous amount of time it can take. Science fiction often gets around this by making its characters spend the trip in suspended animation. Scientists think it's a good idea, and they're currently trying to unlock the secrets of safely executing suspended animation. One feasible way to achieve this is cryostasis, freezing the body. Could get pretty messy, though, they say. Number 2, teleportation, which I tried to look this up separately a little bit because I felt like teleportation and time travel were kind of tied in. They're saying there's an already working version of teleportation.
Yes.
So far, only on small scale. It's called quantum teleportation.
Very small scale. We're talking like subatomic particles.
Right. But that's where you start,
Yep.
And then the warp drive. So they already have several ideas, such as wormholes and negative mass propulsion, as to how they may eventually be able to make warp drives work. The most prominent possibility at the moment is based on 1994 theory of Miguel Alcubierre. This idea is based on expanding the fabric of space behind a ship and retracting the space ahead, which would make the ship move forward as though it were riding an enormous conveyor belt. That was number 1 on the list. So I think it's neat that all of those are, who knows how many of those will actually come to fruition. But very neat that there's actually groups and scientists and funding for all of those things.
Yeah, I think we should encourage more people to get into science. It's one of the things I wish I would have embraced at a younger age. I still could. Maybe when my kids get a little older, I can go back to school and maybe change my career or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I know with the warp drive stuff, one of the designs that they've it looks very much like a Vulcan ship from one of the Star Trek movies or TV shows. I don't know, but it's got it's basically the ship, and then it's got a disc around it that uses that folds the space time. But we don't even have to get faster than light. I mean, you can traverse some pretty far distances just getting only a few percentage of the speed of light. So it makes the universe smaller. But then you start getting into relativity stuff that I talked about before. So once you leave, basically, you're not coming home to the same Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird.
So, okay, Sequoia, you have an article, or?
I do. I have a couple. I will sort of like try and stay in the same vein with this one. So I'm sure you guys may have heard about this, but a couple weeks ago they announced that they were able to grow mini human brains in a petri dish. I don't know if you guys heard about this.
I've seen some in people before, but not in a petri dish.
Touché, sir. Yeah, they were able to they were able to grow humans' stem cells. They're about pea-sized gobs of brain tissue, but they are developing into like very specific kinds of brain tissue. It says here, including a cerebral cortex and a retina.
Wow.
And they're trying to use them to model genetic disorders and stuff like that, and it's not like these are capable of higher functioning skills or anything like that. It's not like, these brains have cognitive thought at this point. But basically they're trying to develop them so they can start doing studies on human brains, because like rodent brains aren't necessarily, indicative of how our brains work. And, yeah, so they're I won't get into a whole nother conversation. That's like the rabbit hole of conversation we could go down. But basically they're just trying to grow these brains so they can start sort of like looking at them and using them for testing and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It also seems like it would be more humane, I suppose, than having to use rats. It's kind of unfair to the rats just because they're rats and we're humans.
Yeah,
so that's probably the rabbit hole she was.
We're going to torture rats.
So yeah. So this one that I've got, it was an honorable mention at an electronica festival in Austria. And what it did is you whisper a message into a microphone, and it encodes the sound and converts it into an electrical signal, which modulates, and it doesn't really matter how it does it, but it modulates in a field around your body, okay? And it stays there until you would touch like somebody's earlobe, and then it disperses the field, and the person would hear whatever you whispered. Yeah, crazy.
You could like walk away.
You would
somewhere
whisper
else. Right.
You would whisper it. It would get saved, I guess is the best term I can come, in an electrostatic field around your body. You walk over and touch the person's earlobe, and they would hear what it was that you had said. You could be in another room and record it and walk into the room and then touch them. And so one of the things that they said, once they start scaling the technology up, is somebody who who might be extremely interested in it is like Disney. I don't know how many of you have been to Disney World or Disneyland anytime recently, but they're always looking for stuff to immerse their people in their the shows that they do.
Yeah,
it gets crazy how really their Imagineers really make these things, and to have that kind of a technology in which, heck, if you have it, you could have somebody who comes up and like just touches you, and then you hear some sort of pre-recorded message. Also sort of creepy, but there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Sequoia. So there you go.
So next article, Sequoia.
Because you only have one, right?
I was clear on that one article. I was clear. I run this part of the show by like bouncing back and forth and going, you Sequoia, you Justin, you Sequoia. It's my thing. I'm good at it.
Okay, so this is my requisite, like, probably most likely inappropriate story for the podcast. Because I feel like I always have at least one that's like, should I bring this up? You know what? I'm going to anyway. So they've released a study that shows that men with smaller testicles are linked to being better fathers.
I saw that study too, and I was thinking about saving that one to talk about. I did not, though. Not because I thought you would.
Justin, I want you to know that you're a bad father.
Thank you. Thanks.
I feel like Justin's like, I can't say anything.
I don't know where to go with this one.
I can't be happy or mad.
As I read it, I was thinking to myself, it sort of makes sense because testosterone production is in the testicles, I believe. I would have to go to our resident anthropologist, hippie, anthropologist hippie. So I think that testosterone comes from the testicles, and so I would imagine smaller testicles would be less likely to produce as much testosterone, and so possibly that father would have more estrogen, and that is something that would make them a better father, I suppose. I guess it really depends on how you would measure whether or not somebody is a good or a bad father.
Well, I guess it wasn't so much whether or not they were good or bad fathers, more about they did it using fMRI scans, which are used in a lot of studies like this, where they scan their brain and then they showed them pictures of their children and scan their brains while they were looking at the pictures of their children, and the parts of your brain that correspond to care and love lit up more with men who had smaller testicles.
Okay. So
it's actually maybe not as much like better fathers in practice, but I feel like James doesn't even know what to do with this right now. Well, because they use fMRI scans and lots of different things. Like they did a study at one point trying to find out does love fade? So they took people who were just falling in love or who had just fallen in love and scanned their brain and showed them pictures of the person that they were with. And then they took people who had been married 50 plus years and did the same thing, scanned their brain and showed them pictures of the person that they were married to. And they actually proved that the same parts of the brain light up, like in the exact same patterns. So,
Well, someone who's lasted 50 years in a relationship, though, that's a unique group of people.
Yes.
It's got to be a very small percentage of the marriage population.
Yes. I mean, marriages in general only have like a 1 in 2 shot of actually lasting.
That is correct.
Who's got to measure the testicles? I don't want to take this off track. Really?
There was one person involved in this who was like, really, that's my job? That's my job in this one?
I quit.
It was probably an intern, so they don't really count anyway.
Yeah. It was like
They're
the 5th
happy
intern.
To be there.
It was the 5th intern that actually won. Yeah, I'll measure them.
You want me to do what? No.
Yeah. No.
I'm doing that. I'm going to do that fecal matter study.
I'm going back.
You probably wouldn't want to pick the intern who's like, I'll do it. Like, that's the intern that you don't want doing it.
I'd love to.
They were like, James, sit down.
I can do it now. Yeah, I don't even know.
I'm sure it probably has something to do with testosterone, or it could even have something to do. I mean, it could have nothing to do with testosterone. It could have everything to do with insecurity, maybe even. My brain is connecting a lot of factors right now that it's sort of hard to like verbalize. It could have more something to do with men with smaller testicles may feel self-conscious about it, therefore are less promiscuous.
Like, how small do they have to be for that to be an effect? Because I like, honestly, like, from a male perspective.
I just want to know whether or not I'm going to be a good father or not.
Yeah. Like, but I don't think it's something that men are really conscious of. They'd have to be, like, just being honest, they'd have to be, like, I think, like, really small for a man to be self-conscious about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, from a male perspective, it's not something that I think about. I have no idea. I guess, like, I don't know what average is. I don't know what big or small is. This has really gone off the rails. But I don't know, and I don't, like...
Well, I can't necessarily imagine a man being very self-conscious about it because I don't think it really matters one way or the other. Because, I honestly don't think women care, and I don't really think other men would care. I don't think anybody's partner would really care. But, people get weird about weird things. They're self-conscious
that's gonna be like a chunk of society. It's gonna be like a small portion that might, be in that vein. But I think most people, just is what it is. And, it's interesting that it has an effect in that way. Who knows? It'd be interesting to know if that's something, as like, and you're an anthropologist, if that's something that over time, over the past, centuries and, millennia is it something that has gotten smaller in, like, humans?
Well, I will say that I do remember watching a documentary on, I think it was human sexuality or something, so Sequoia would be interested. As that is, for those who don't know what she wants to specialize in with her anthropology.
Thank you for clarifying, actually.
Yeah, it's not just Sequoia likes human sexuality. Anyway, they did studies, again, with an fMRI, because that's basically the machine that they use to tell what everybody is thinking. And what they've done is they
know what everyone is thinking.
Yep, unless you're wearing tinfoil on your head. So there you go. My head. So anyway, they put women into one of these machines, and they asked them to rate pictures of men based on they would give them criteria. Okay, so and rate a level of attractiveness, and they would prep them in particular ways so that they would, not to get a specific result, but so that they would be thinking about different things in terms of what attractive is. And so in the studies in which they're looking for somebody who's attractive as a father, as a provider, as a partner in a marriage, their features tend to be more feminine, less of a cleft jaw, less powerful chins and things like that, less body hair, less facial hair, those types of things. And then ones that they rate as attractive, not for that type of thing, but for sexual pleasure or those types of things, tend to have more masculine features, broader shoulders, broader chests, the real heavy squared jaws, those type of things. And so that would sort of make sense in the same regard, because those type of body features tend to come when there's more testosterone in the system versus less, I believe. I know it has a lot to do with genetics as well, but ask anybody. Well, don't ask anybody. I'm sure you could do the research. Who has done any the stuff where you take pills if you're transsexual, pre-op transsexual, or anything like that, where you might take estrogen supplements or
steroids?
Not steroids. Like if you're a woman who is becoming a man, or a man becoming a woman, you take the supplements that your body doesn't produce naturally, and it does change your body shape. It does change how broad your shoulders are and how broad your chest is, or increases the size of your breasts and things like that. So there you go.
I will say, sort of on the same note, that they've actually done some studies where they think that the rise of birth control usage may be contributing to the rise in divorce, because when women are on birth control, they do not ovulate. And if they're looking for, like, when a woman is pregnant, she wants to surround herself with family. And so they think that when women are on birth control and they're meeting men, that they may be gravitating towards men who are more genetically the same as them. And then when they go off birth control, the compatibility isn't there as much, because when you are not on birth control, you are looking for somebody who is more genetically different in order to increase your progeny's chance of survival. So they think that there may be a rise in divorce rate because of birth control, because if a woman meets her partner while she is on birth control and then goes off, there is an incompatibility that is there because of the fact that she was under different types of hormones when she met him.
Weird.
Yeah.
Women. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I like you didn't even like fully finish saying it, and you were like, "I'm just kidding."
Well, you know, like you two know my sense of humor, but the world in general doesn't know maybe that
I was going to say,
Wait,
that was
joking.
awful kind to refer to it as the world. Yes, everyone in the world watches our podcast.
Yeah. We like to call them the Baker's Dozen Fan Club. That's what I'm coming up with now.
We're going to have T-shirts.
Or a T-shirt.
I also want to point out how funny it is that I am in like 3 weeks into my first anthropology class, and I am now the resident anthropologist.
Uh-oh. You get too far into credentials, we might have to kick you off the podcast. Okay, Justin, a couple minutes left. You got another article?
I do have, and this is one I definitely wanted to get to, and no, it's not about the iPhone 5S that's coming out, because frankly, I don't give a crap about that.
Ooh, can I join that club? I don't give a crap.
Yeah, I would like to point out that I heard that they're not doing any pre-orders for them, though. So, for those who are interested, you're going to have to stand in line. Sorry. Oh, well.
Actually, I'm not sorry.
Yeah, I don't.
Wait 2 weeks and show up at the store, and there won't be a line, and they'll still have phones.
Then they'll still have them.
Actually,
So anyway,
wait a day. Anyway.
Hey, you're wasting my time, man. We only got 2 minutes here.
This is our time. It's I think and you think.
Anyway, I am, as I speak right now, I'm posting this on our Facebook page so you can look it up. And what it is there is this. It's a short film, I guess you would call it. It's 5 minutes long. It's definitely worth watching, all 5 minutes of it. Don't skip ahead. And what it is a photographer went to. He had a young lady that was working for him or with him, or and her name was Danielle, and he went to her family reunion and took pictures of basically everybody in her family reunion for all different ages. And then he went through and selected the ones that have similar bone structure and facial features and things like that. And then he had a digital effects team come in and touch up things like fix eye color and hair and everything. And in the end is this 5-minute video in which you start with probably a 5 or 6 year old child staring at the screen with a white background, and over this 5 minutes you watch them age from this 5 or 6 year old child up to a 70 or 80 year old woman. And it's awesome. It's really fascinating because you can't actually see any one specific change. You can tell something is going on. There's no it's not like stop motion photography or anything like that where you can see these cuts and edits. There's just this general sort of progression. It's worth it. Watch it. They recommend you watch it with headphones on, I guess, because the audio was kind of cool. I was at the zoo today, and that's where I was watching it because I was waiting for somebody to finish in an area of the zoo, and so I just sat down and I watched it then. But there you go. Check it out. It's on. Whoa, I am bouncing around here. It's on our Facebook page. I didn't send it through Libsyn, so you won't see it on our Twitter or anything. But it is on our Facebook page, so check it out. There you go.
That's facebook.com/ithinkthatyoutthink.
That is correct. There you are. There really was. I mean, the only other thing that I had was that scientists believe humans will one day colonize the universe. There you go.
It was totally Sequoia's turn.
I'm sorry. Sequoia, did you have another one?
It was mostly just about the effects of caffeine on the body.
Okay.
Which is awesome.
Awesome. Yes.
Well, I thought it was funny because one of them was caffeine can kill you.
Cool.
Well,
no.
everything can it?
Like,
I mean,
and
a bunch of
then
stuffed animals.
And And one of the other ones was apparently that caffeine might boost female sex drive, which I thought was interesting. I did not know that.
So I need to start hanging out at Starbucks more. All right.
Can you hang out at Starbucks more?
I go through the drive-thru, so I don't really hang out. I just visit regularly. Like, you know, my local Starbucks is like my Cheers. You know, everybody knows my name. Although my
name
there
they
is
gave
Red,
you.
it's Red Car Guy. But hey, you know, there's a lot of red cars, and I got singled out as Red Car Guy. So I take that as a compliment, or that I might have an issue. I drink too much Starbucks. If that's possible, I'm not sure. Mathematically, I guess it is.
Just don't ever sit down and run, you know, a collection of how much money you've spent over the last year there, and I'm sure you won't slip into any sort of depression.
I already kind of know, and anyways.
It doesn't matter. It's your money to spend however you want.
It's true, and I like to keep those lovely, nice people that work at Starbucks employed.
And just be happy we live in a country in which caffeine is legal, because there are countries out there where it's not.
Are you serious?
I am completely serious. They do tend to be actually. Don't quote me on this because I'm terrible about, you know, giving misinformation constantly. But I feel like Holland, where marijuana is legal, caffeine is illegal. Someone can look that up and email us and tell me how wrong I am, or how amazingly intelligent, debonair, and awesome I am, and how much you drink caffeine. So there you go. So, anything you guys thought about the podcast this week, please email us. ithinkyoutthink2012@gmail.com. Like the video, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it wherever. Send us a line, send us a message, say, hey, how's it going? Hey, we want to be on the show. Hey, please don't ever make another show again because it drives us crazy and we hate you. That's fine, too. I mean, honestly, I don't think we get enough of the people yelling at us and telling us to get off the air and shut up. So there you go. And you need that, or else our egos are just going to keep getting bigger, guys. Ladies, folks, everyone. There you go.
Way to be gender specific.
And
humans
other
and
sentient
beings.
Yep.
All right.
That's our biggest following.
So we will see you guys next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.